Yoga is not a physical exercise, although it has a physical component. Let's zoom out. We are riding through the human experience in these things that we call bodies. We all have a body. We also have this mind. I like to call the body-mind complex the Earthship, because it is the physical component of our experience that we are riding in, that we are journeying in for 80 to 100 years if we're lucky. We are riding in these things, this Earthship, this carrier vessel. The door to the rabbit hole is the question, if we are riding in our mind and body, then who is the rider? Many people who are stuck in a calcified ego complex associate themselves with their body, or more commonly with their mind. This is me, or this is me, my thoughts are me. But thoughts come and go. So who is the one observing the thoughts? I mean, I am always here, right? And if thoughts are impermanent, and I am permanently observing them, then I cannot be my thoughts. Easier to see is that the body changes. When we were a child, we had one body. As a teenager, we had another body. As adults, we have another body. Scientists say that our cells completely regenerate every 7 years. But again, there is this continuous perception of I. So I cannot be the body if my cells are changing every 7 years. I cannot be the mind if my mind is creating thoughts and emotions which are impermanent. There's something riding in this mind-body complex, or this Earthship, as I like to call it, that is the observer of all these things. This is the nature of the human experience. Monkeys with God inside. God is the observer. God is the captain of this Earthship. The problem is that sometimes our Earthship is on autopilot, and it's been on autopilot for lifetimes, surfing waves of samsara before we shed the light of awareness on what is real, what is, and then we go back to the helm, we go back to the control center. We start riding the ship. But most of us, for most of our lives, we're just lost in a calcified ego complex. Now, the good news is, yoga is not a physical exercise. Yoga is Earthship technology. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha is the first sutra of Patanjali. Now, Patanjali was the OG of yoga, and he wrote the sutras about 3,500 years ago. In the sutras was a description of what modern yoga is. Of course, when I say modern yoga, I mean the yoga from 3,500 years ago, because yoga as a technology existed for millennia before that, but it was decentralized, lacking a common framework to express the technology. So you had the tantrics, you had the yogis, you had all of these different roots in ancient India, and Patanjali brought them together in the sutras. And the first sutra is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. This means that yoga is the controlled modification of the thinking mind. Yoga is a technology that alters the brain wave frequencies until we reach base reality, which is synonymous with God. This is why yoga is cosmic. Yoga is astral. Yoga is causal. And it is also physical. You see, the yogis believe that we have 4 bodies. We have the physical body, the flesh, the matter that we can see. We have the mental body. This is our mind. Our mind is an illusion. It's an immaterial illusion. What is mind? Mind is a construct of thoughts, emotions, memories, expectations. All of those things I mentioned are weightless and immaterial. Therefore, the mind is an illusion. Thoughts, we know them as electricity in the neural circuitry, weightless. Emotions are charged thoughts. Emotions are types of thoughts with an emotional charge to them. I can think, hey, this tree behind me has a green leaf. That's a thought. Or I could think, this tree behind me has a green leaf and I hate the color green because it reminds me of my ex-girlfriend. That's an emotion. They're just cousins. Same thing. Immaterial, weightless illusions. Memories are also illusions. Memories exist somewhere in our mind, but we can't find them. We can't pick them out. Memories are subjective. Expectations of the future. Same as memories. Weightless, immaterial. So through memories and through expectations of the future, we perceive time. Therefore, time is not real either. The only thing that is real is this present moment, synonymous with base reality, synonymous with God. But how to get there? How to actually have an experience of this reality? How to shed layers of mind, body, to be able to perceive this reality? This is the purpose of the technology of yoga. Yoga is not only physical. There is a physical component called asana. Asana is what we are most familiar with in the West. That was intentional. The Indians brought over asana because they assumed, and I think rightfully, that Westerners would not be interested in the higher stages of yoga, at least not at first. They would be interested more in the physical exercise. So we have asana as the physical component of yoga, which is important. It is important to prepare the body. But to prepare it for what? For the deeper and higher states of yoga. After asana, after the physical component, comes pranayama, which is still physical, but one layer more subtle. This is using the breath in specific ways to access deeper and more subtle states of consciousness. You can think of pranayama as preparing the mind to go into deeper states of awareness. Where asana prepares the body, pranayama prepares the mind. And I hate to separate these two concepts, body and mind, but we will do this for this explanation because it's useful. Asana prepares the body. Pranayama prepares the mind. Well, if we are just body and mind, yoga should be done at pranayama, right? But it's not. The next stage of yoga is called Pratyahara, translated to withdrawal of the senses. You see, we have our 5 senses completely externalized when we are awake. We see the beauty around us, we hear, we smell, we touch, we taste. There is energy required to process the input. The raw input from our senses requires energy to process. When we internalize the senses or withdraw the senses, we no longer need this processing energy. So what happens to it? It remains inside, and we can use this force to go even deeper into awareness. So we prepare the body with asana. We prepare the mind with pranayama. We internalize the energy, internalize the senses with pratyahara. So now we have this bulb of energy. By the time we hit pratyahara, things are getting very subtle. Somebody who is practicing exercises in the stage of pratyahara will just seem like they're meditating. Nothing's happening on the outside. So now imagine in pratyahara we have this big bulb of energy flowing through our body that would otherwise be used to process our senses and no longer needs to be used for that. Then we can go to the next stage of yoga. Dharana. As I progress through the stages of yoga, they become harder and harder to describe with words because they must be experienced to be understood. In a sense, it is the same with all stages of yoga, but when you go further down the chain, like to asana, you can easily explain warrior 1, warrior 2. Of course, to actually do it and to hold it is a whole different thing. It's a whole different direct experience, which is the ultimate teacher. But still, on a grosser and more physical level, you can use words to describe these things. Pranayama, you can use words, okay? Close the nostril, close this one. Even pratyahara, you can use words. But now once we get to Dharana, which is translated as single-pointed focus, it gets harder and harder to describe the experiences that you will have with words. This is where direct experience becomes even more relevant. So with Dharana, imagine, in the previous stage of Pratyahara, we collected all of this energy that would normally be used to process external sensory input. Now in Dharana, with this single point of focus, what we do is we concentrate that energy to a single point of focus. So you can imagine that you had all of this diffused energy inside from the last stage of Pratyahara. And when you do certain meditative exercises and kriyas in the stage of Dharana, what happens is all of that collected energy gets concentrated to a single point of focus. Suddenly, this is where the sensation of body begins to change and slowly evaporate, because all that is real, all that becomes present, is this concentrated ball of energy. The next stage of yoga, after the stage of Dharana, is called Dhyana. Dhyana is translated meditation. So we in English and in the West, we use the word meditation for everything. We say like, for me, cooking's like meditation, running's like meditation. And that is fine. I'm not a linguistic purist at all. But the issue is that Sanskrit, which is where these words Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana come from, Sanskrit was a language that was built around consciousness expansion. So the language as a tool has words to express concepts on a very highly calibrated level when it comes to consciousness. English is not that kind of language. So pretty much everything from pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, in English, we would say it's meditation. If we sit cross-legged and just close our eyes, in English, we would say, oh, that guy is meditating. But technically speaking, and it is an important distinction to make, meditation is dhyana. Meditation is when this single point of focus, it begins to change. Anything I say about this state of Dhyana may sound crazy. Dhyana is an egg. Dhyana, you can imagine, in Pratyahara we had all of this energy inside of us that would otherwise be used for processing external sensory input. We withdraw the senses and Pratyahara comes in. Dharana, we take all this energy that's inside of us and concentrate it to a single point of focus. Body begins to dissolve. In Dhyana, the body has completely dissolved. The energy that we have concentrated to this point in the previous stage of Dharana becomes something different, is all I will say. It becomes something different, like an egg. There is no separation between the observer and the egg. Or I should say, there is at first. Samadhi, Nirvana, enlightenment is the final stage of yoga. And this is when there is no longer separation between the observer and the egg. Everything becomes one. This is base reality. Not the egg itself. Because if I can perceive a separation between the observer and this thing that I'm calling the egg, then it is not base reality. It's close. When there is no longer any perception of separation between the observer and this concentrated ball that I'm calling an egg, this is Samadhi. So you see, this is the entire process of yoga. Yoga is a technology that begins on the physical gross layers of the body, progresses to the mind through pranayama, and then progresses through a series of techniques to internalize the energy, concentrate it, and then transform it into something that leads us to base reality, synonymous with God.